Now, just in case you do not already have it installed on your site, if you actually need to install Weaver 2 and perhaps do not know how that is done, all you have to do is go to Appearance and Themes in your WordPress site and then just go to the Install Themes tab and simply search for the word Weaver. And this will bring it up on your screen. All you have to do is click on the little install link right here and then actually activate the theme once it is installed on your site. Now, I already have this installed and activated on this particular site. However, I have not actually done anything with this site. This is a default installation here. So what I'm going to be walking you guys through tonight is what I would consider to be the basic knowledge that you need to have about Weaver. This would be the sub-themes that are available and a number of the different settings that are also available, especially the settings that actually control the way your public website is going to look. And then I will briefly be touching on some additional things like page templates and per page options towards the end of tonight's class. But a large portion of it will actually be covering the different settings and features that are available in Weaver. And instead of simply walking you through each of these different settings and features, I will actually be sidestepping a lot here and there to show you some real examples of these features in use. So you can actually visualize how all this is going to work. That way, when you are trying to come up with a custom web design for your own site, then you can actually kind of picture what's going to be needed and be able to refer back to the appropriate Weaver settings so you can make all that happen on your live site. Now, to start with, I'm going to talk to you about Weaver 2 sub-themes. Now, there are some Weaver 2 sub-themes that are only available through the Pro version, and they're actually trying to sell you on that right here. Visit our website for even more great-looking sub-themes. To be able to use these sub-themes, you need this additional Weaver 2 plugin called Weaver 2 Theme Extras. I'll actually be covering this plugin a little bit in the second part of the series to access some additional theme features that are only available by using this plugin. So it's not something that's only used for people that have the Pro Edition. However, there are certain features in the Pro Edition, like using these premium sub-themes, that does require this particular plugin. Now, for those, just using the free version, I always use the free version myself. You have all of these different sub-themes that are available for you to work from. Now, you may immediately look at all these and perhaps you don't see something that fits the design, the color scheme of whatever kind of site you would like to actually build. That's a good question, Alan. He's asking, are these sub-themes considered to be child themes? I would consider these to be child themes. I've never actually looked into the coding to see whether Weaver 2 does this appropriately as a true WordPress child theme, but just with the way the actual settings and everything work for these themes, I would consider them to be child themes myself. You have the main theme, but then each of these child themes will ultimately control the overall look and design of your actual website. Now, the whole point here is to actually pick one of these sub-themes that you can use on your website. But if you don't see something here that fits the look of what you're going for, it doesn't mean that Weaver can't accomplish what you are looking to accomplish. It simply means that you might have to go in and make some custom changes yourself. I'm typically doing this on a lot of the websites that I build anyways, so personally I don't find this to be a big deal, but I wanted to be sure to explain this whole process to all of you that have perhaps not done this before. Now, you have some basic color schemes when you're glancing at all these different sub-themes that are available. But instead of focusing on the actual colors that are being used in these sub-themes, I try to pay more attention to the actual layout of these sub-themes instead. I'm really referring to where the sidebars are placed and where the menus are placed, how the content appears on the site. A lot of these overall design factors take more time and effort to go through and change than it simply does to change the colors that are being used on a site. So whenever possible, I try to pick a sub-theme that is based on the layout and overall design that I'm looking to achieve instead of actually going for colors instead. Now, really important here, you have to actually set your sub-theme before you proceed on with doing anything else in terms of making adjustments to the different settings that are on your site. When you select one of these sub-themes and click on this blue button right here to set to the selected sub-theme, you will actually clear out any existing settings that you have set for this theme up here under the main options. Now, this simply means that you have to start with a sub-theme and then build on it from there. You can't go through and mess with settings and then decide later on that you want to change your sub-theme, or else it's going to wipe out all the work that you've done and you'll simply have to start over from scratch. So what I'm going to do, it really doesn't matter which one of these I select, but I'll just select one particular theme, sub-theme from this list here. I commonly find myself using 2011 Light simply because I typically go for this kind of a site layout more often, and I also kind of like starting with a basic color scheme. That way, if I want to add colors to the site, I can do so in places that I want, but I don't necessarily have to go through and change every single color for the sub-theme to actually be able to style it up a certain way. So I'm going to go ahead and select 2011 Light as my sub-theme, and when I go and view my live web page, I believe I already had it selected here, then I get to see what this looks like by default. But I'm obviously not simply stuck here. I have a lot more that I could do beyond this to change the way this site is going to appear. So what I'm going to do now is actually walk you guys through each of these different tabs that are available here in the main options. This is essentially where you want to go after you have set your sub-theme to actually control the way Weaver displays your website. Hello, Mike. Just joining. I don't believe you missed too horribly much so far. We're mainly just talking about selecting sub-themes. Just be sure that you actually select a sub-theme before you proceed on with editing the theme settings, because that will wipe out any changes that you've made in here when you select a sub-theme. So now I'm going to go through each of these different tabs here and explain what some of these different features do. I'll actually be covering pretty much all of the features that are here, some of them a little more in-depth than others, and where appropriate, I'm going to be showing you guys some real-life examples as well. Now, to start with, in the general appearance up at the top here, I'm in the general appearance tab. each of these different settings that is available, some of them are asking for different types of information. One of the common things that you will see throughout Weaver in these settings is this colored text box right here that has a series of letters and numbers in it, and it will always start with this number sign. This is a color, and whenever you click on this text box, it brings up this color selection tool for you, so you can change the color if you would like to. Now for this particular setting, this is the outside background. This actually controls the overall background color of your site. So all of this color out here that is not part of the actual content of the site. So if I wanted to simply change this to a different color, I could make it a darker color, for example, if I wanted to. It's as simple as just changing the color and saving your settings, and the adjustments automatically happen on your live website. So you can do the same type of thing here with other settings that are available that also have this color option, like the wrapper page background. Now, you may look at these different backgrounds and get a little bit confused in terms of what each of these different settings is actually going to alter on the live website. The outside background's pretty obvious. It's your main background color. But then you have these other settings, wrapper page background, main area background, and also container area background. These actually alter the background colors for different parts of the content portions of your page. So as you can see here, the wrapper page background is actually set to white as the color. And the other ones here, these are set to be transparent. So all of the main content areas of my site appear to be white. Now, in most cases, you're actually going to want to leave these last two down here set to transparent. Otherwise, you will have portions of the content area that will actually show up with a different background color. Just as an example here, I can set this main area background instead of being transparent and just refresh the page for you real quick. So you can see that this is actually altering the main content area of the page, but it's not altering the entire background. I still have the footer down here, and I still have the header up here as well that are not getting altered. So, to keep everything the same look, we actually use transparent for these particular settings. Now the last one here, this default text color. This controls the text color for my website, but this actually is not going to control the text color of everything. This will only be the text color for portions of text that are not controlled by a setting elsewhere within all these different settings tabs. Just to show you what I'm talking about, it's actually only going to change two small areas of the page when I set this default text color right here. It's going to change part of my breadcrumb, which is this portion of my page right here, and then it's also going to change part of my footer, basically the blank text that's down here, right here, and also right in the middle of this statement at the bottom as well. So let me refresh my page real quick just so you can see what I'm talking about. Now remember, I set this as a red text color here, and it's only altering the text color here and here and here. The actual content in my page, the text here, and all the other surrounding text items, none of this is getting altered. And this is happening because this text color setting simply gets overridden by other text color settings. So this is really something that's very important to remember within Weaver. Whenever you're setting different kinds of settings here, there may be other settings that exist within this theme that could also control that same aspect. It just might be specific to one portion of my page instead of affecting the entire page. Rand's asking, how do I set transparent? If you want to set transparent, just type in the word transparent, and it automatically sets that for you. I don't believe they actually have any kind of selection within this color picker that will set it as transparent, but you can just simply type in the word and save that instead of an actual color, and it'll make that transparent. Now, one more thing to point out here. Anytime you see this little CSS text with a plus symbol next to it, you can actually click on this to expand a box, and in this box you can actually provide your own custom CSS rules that will affect this particular portion of your public web page. Now, always remember exactly what this is relating to. For example, on the default text color, any CSS that I set here is really only going to modify any text that would have been modified by changing this color right here. So just to give you an example, whenever you set CSS code right here, you have to be sure to enclose this code in brackets. These are curly brackets. Now, all I have to do is just provide my custom CSS coding in between these curly brackets here. So for this particular one, I've set the font weight to be bold. So this will make my text bold instead of normal sized. When I update this change and go to my live website, just so you can see exactly what this does, this text and this text and this text right here that has been changed to red, this will now become bold text if it was not already bold. But you may also notice something else that happens on my site. This text right here became bolded. Why did this happen? This is happening because the CSS rules that I'm setting right here applies to all text that is within the body of my web page. But if this rule is overwritten somewhere else, then it simply may not apply. So this particular content text right here was not specified to be bold or not bold. So when I change it right here, there's nothing to override it and say, no, this is just supposed to be normal text instead. And actually looking down at my footer text here, this red text doesn't actually appear to have been made bold because this may be getting overridden by another setting elsewhere that forces this text to not be bold. So, make sure you're really careful about using your custom CSS rules, to ensure that the rules that you're typing out here are actually going to apply to the parts of your page that you want. However, once you get a little bit familiar with this system, you can really use these additional CSS rules to pretty much control anything you would like to control. And in fact, you can often control settings that may only be available in the Pro version this way as well. One last thing here. The whole point of this class is not really to be a CSS tutorial, so to speak, but just as an example, if there was a rule here that you were placing and you wanted to try to make sure that this rule does not get overridden by other settings that may be in the theme, one thing that you can at least attempt to do is to add the important tag onto the end of a line of CSS. Now, notice I've done this right before this closing semicolon mark right here. I've simply added the word important with an exclamation point right before it and then a space in between my actual CSS rule. So this simply tells CSS that this particular rule is important and I don't want it to be overridden elsewhere. Now, this doesn't necessarily always work. It really just kind of depends on what the other rules are set up like, because if other CSS rules are using this important tag, then it may not actually prevent it from being overridden. But I at least wanted to point that out as being one potential way that you can sometimes force that CSS code to take effect when ordinarily it would get wiped out by something. Now, some of my favorite settings here that I actually like to use are down below these different checkboxes that are available. Rounded corners actually sets rounded corners for a number of different portions of my page. It's going to affect the overall box that is containing my site, this entire box right here, and it's also going to round the top corners of my footer, the bottom corners of my menu right here, and you won't really be able to see it, but it would also round the top corners of the header if content was far enough up there into those corners to actually be able to tell that that was happening. Now, just so you can see this change on my live site, after updating this, you can see my rounded corners are now taking effect. This one simple little change can kind of help to break up the boxiness of the way this theme naturally displays the website. So I often will end up using this rounded corner setting. Now, you may also notice that there's a second rounded corner setting right here, which has the word content in parentheses. This particular setting is actually going to affect not the overall site, but it's actually going to alter portions of your site within your page content. Let me ensure that I've saved this on the other page, and then I will update my live page right here. Now, initially, you may not notice a lot actually taking place. Let's see, Shane, this is the home page of my site. So this is technically like a blog page just by default, where it would list all the different posts that are available. This right here is actually a post though. And you know, some of these different settings, they can end up looking different on your live site depending on what type of page you're on. So like the home page here and the post page, and then this right here is a standard page. These can actually have some minor differences to them as we proceed through these different settings. Now, just to show you what I'm talking about here, when I changed this last rounded corner setting on the home page, the only adjustment that this actually made was rounding off the corners right here at the bottom of this particular post excerpt. But when I go to the actual post page, you can see that a lot more is actually taking place. I still have the rounded corners right here for the post content area, but then down in the comments section, it is also rounded off these corners for me for these different boxes. Now, on my standard page, the same thing is kind of taking place here, except I don't have a half of a rounded corner box at the bottom, but all of my comments are still provided with rounded corners just like the post page was. Now, this next setting right here, corner radius, this actually controls how round your corners really are. Now, you can see if you look at the information Weaver provides you with here that the default for this setting is 10. So simply typing in the number 10 would still leave the default setting in. Nothing would actually change on the site. But if I provided a different number here other than 10, then this would actually make some adjustments to my site. You can see that they recommend values anywhere between 5 and 15 for the best look. Now, just to show you what this actually does, I'm going to update this to have a corner radius of 15 now instead of the default of 10. I'm actually going to go to this post page to refresh things simply because this page actually has more rounded corners on it down here in all the comments. Now, there's not a major difference. If you noticed when I first refreshed the page, you could have seen the changes taking place with all the corners. What this did was actually round off the corners more than it had on my previous pages. If I flip over to another page that I have not updated yet, you can see that the rounded corners here are smaller, whereas these are more pronounced now using a setting of 15. So going in the opposite direction would give me the other effect. I would actually be making my rounded corners even smaller now. So if I update this with it set to 5, you can see that I still have rounded corners, but they're not very pronounced. They're much smaller now. And this carries on through all the different rounded corners that are on my site. Even the ones here in the content for the second rounded corner setting. So this corner radius is going to affect the rounded corners here from either of these two settings. Now, these last two settings here, I typically find myself using these in a lot of cases simply because I like the way that it makes the public website look. It's just one simple setting or two simple settings here. All you have to do is click on the checkbox to enable it, but it adds a little bit of extra flashiness, so to speak, to your public site. One of these, fading the outside background, this is actually creating a gradient color for you based on this outside background color. Now, I had changed this before, so I can actually set this a little bit lower. This isn't exactly what the default value was, but this puts it a little bit closer to the default value. So now I'm going to end up with a gradient. So it's not going to be a solid background color anymore. It's going to change from one color to another, but it'll do it in small increments all the way down my page. This final setting here is going to wrap my entire site with a shadow. So this is going to help to give it a more 3D look, basically. Now, when I go and update my live web page here, when you look at my background color, you can see that up at the top here, it's darker, and as I scroll down the page, the color actually gets lighter. Once you get far enough down the page, the gradient actually stops. You can see that most of the gradient change is actually taking place right here within the initial viewport of the site, and anything below that will just pretty much end up as the actual background color that you have set for the page. Now, the shadow, it's not horribly obvious, but you can tell a difference if you flip between a page that doesn't have a shadow and a page that does have a shadow. You can see just a little bit of an additional border around the outside of the site here that kind of has a slight gradient to it that it's creating, just so the page content here kind of feels like it's jumping off of the background ever so slightly. I feel like these initial settings right here provides a lot of change with the way my actual site ends up looking. Now, going a little bit further down here, there's only a few more settings on this particular page. Right here, I have these border settings. This allows me to add borders to specific parts of my page. but this second setting here is actually just adding one particular border that's already included in this first setting. So if you wanted to add borders, ultimately all you would really need to do is click on this first checkbox. And just so you can see what this is actually doing on the live website here, my widget area over here in the sidebar now has a slight border around it. So it's not really a major change. Depending on what theme you're using, I have seen, or sub-theme you're using, I have seen some of them add additional borders around like the main site content areas as well as the sidebar over here. But in a lot of cases, I really don't find myself using these borders at all. I feel like the site kind of has a cleaner look to it without them. That way, you know, you don't have that little border stretching around this sidebar. I felt like it's really not doing a lot of benefit for me. So I at least wanted to explain those really quickly so you know what they do. Now, the last thing that I really need to point out here, well, really two more things. I have this disable background gradient option. This is going to disable background gradients, but it's not just going to do it here for the main outside background if I have selected this particular option, but throughout some of these other pages, there are some other gradients that you can actually enable, but this will actually disable everything. I'm not really quite sure what the practical use of this particular feature is. It really kind of seems, based on what they are saying about it, that it's more used with the Pro version more so than it is with the free version, which might be one of the reasons why I've never actually done much with this particular setting. Now, the last thing that I need to point out on this page is this style sheet setting. Now, typically, you're not going to want to use this, but if you ever decided that you wanted to break the Weaver theme down and not have it controlling the way the site looks, let's say you had some kind of client and they wanted you to build a site and they had very, very specific recommendations and plans for how they want their site to actually look, and maybe you couldn't easily accomplish that using the Weaver theme. Well, what you can do is to actually wipe out the Weaver CSS by using just the minimal CSS coding for it by clicking on this checkbox here, and then you would simply provide a URL in this box that points to a CSS file that would contain all the coding that you want to use to actually design this site. Now again, this is really, really only for super advanced users, but just in case you happen to run across a situation and are comfortable enough with CSS to want to try something like that, this is how you would actually accomplish it. Now the next section here, this layout tab, this is going to control essentially the way my site's going to look in terms of the overall size of my website, and also in terms of the layout of where different parts of my site are shown. And a lot of this really involves the sidebar right here. You have a number of different ways that you can actually configure Weaver to work in terms of using the sidebars. Now, before I move along to the sidebars, I'm going to start up top here with these different layout settings that are available. First, you have a width for your theme. This is controlling the amount of space from this edge of your site all the way over to this edge of your site. So if you wanted to make it bigger, all you would do is simply increase this number until you reached the desired size. However, if you ever wanted to go smaller, They specifically recommend not to go any lower than 650 pixels, or else you'll have unexpected results on mobile devices. The reason for this is this particular setting right here, controlling the theme width. This is actually not a guaranteed width. It doesn't mean that your site is always going to be 940 pixels. This is a maximum number for your site. And when appropriate, Weaver will scale down your website to fit on other kinds of devices. So if you're on a tablet where you only had 500 or 600 in terms of pixels wide that you could actually display on a screen, then it would try to shrink the theme to actually make it fit correctly and be viewed correctly. Now, if you ever wanted to disable that, you have this setting right here where you can fix the theme width to this particular number. However, you really don't want to do this unless you simply don't care about mobile traffic at all. Mobile traffic would still be able to view your site, but it wouldn't be optimized for their devices at all. It would simply be them viewing a normal web page and it's showing up on their screen. So everything would end up pretty small. They'd have to zoom in to different parts of your site to actually be able to read text and see images and things of the nature. Let's see, Ran is asking what is the widest that I would recommend. In many sites, it's a wide site. Honestly, in terms of the widest, the absolute widest that I would really recommend would be like, the maximum dimensions of a high definition screen. So you would actually have 1920, I believe, would be really a absolute maximum. And even then, you probably don't want to go this far. This is going to stretch it to be essentially as big as you can possibly make it to fit on this page here. But one more thing worth pointing out, you have these margins around the sides here. These can be set later, but where I'm actually setting the theme width to 1920, I can essentially guarantee you that this is not stretching a complete 1920 pixels because of these margins over here. I think they're 20 pixel margins on each side, so that would give me 1880 for potentially a maximum theme width that I would use here, 1880. But even then, I don't know if that's a very practical number. The only people that would actually be able to use a site at that particular width would be people on, in most cases, desktop computers. Some of the decent laptops that have a true high-def display, they can offer that particular resolution. Yeah, I honestly do too, Ran. I typically leave the theme width just set to the default of 940 unless I really have a need to do something different. Shane, the difference with using this theme width fix setting right here is really only going to happen if you're on mobile devices, like on a tablet or a cell phone or something of that nature. It would force the theme width to not shrink down to size, basically. Other than that, though, they actually recommend not using this particular option unless you really, really have a reason to do so. I don't use this on any of my sites that I can think of, at least. Now, next here we have 3 additional settings. All of these settings are actually going to control the spacing. Okay, I was right with the 20 pixels. This is the top and the bottom margins around the entire site and the left and the right margins. So on this page, my top margins and my left margins and my right margins, and then down at the bottom, I have a bottom margin as well. These are set to 20 pixels by default. If I wanted my content to stretch all the way to the edge of the page and I was using, a really large theme width here, I could simply set all these different boxes to 0 and then set this to 1920. And I should end up with content that's stretched edge to edge on my entire site here. But obviously this actually doesn't look as good. This isn't something I would really recommend doing. But I thought I would at least point this out so you could know how to do it in case you wanted to accomplish that on a particular site. Now, this last one here, this wrapper padding, this is padding between particular page elements of my site. I have my header here. You can see that there's some spacing, some padding here in between my header and in my page content. And this also exists with my sidebars and footer as well. This padding would be controlled by this particular setting right here. Did I remove the reply box? No, I don't think on my post page. Are you talking about for the comments, the comment replies? Or were you no, they should still be there. Typically I do go through and disable comments on basically all the WordPress sites that I build. However, I thought I would leave everything enabled for this particular tutorial so you can actually see how all the different parts of a default WordPress site will actually end up getting displayed. Let's see, next here I have the sidebar layout. This particular part here, you really have two main settings, the first one and the second one, where you are specifying a particular sidebar layout to use for your website. And these two settings relate to specific types of pages on your site. The first one will be for your blog pages and your posts and your standard pages, whereas this next one is going to be for your archive pages. And this would also be for things like search pages as well. Now, if you don't know what an archive page is, this would be something like you have these archives here based on a particular date. So this would actually be an archive page, but there's other different kinds of archive pages in the WordPress system as well. But for the most part, this first text drop-down box right here will control the layout that is used on the main pages that you will typically be creating on a WordPress site. Now these last three settings, this essentially breaks down this first setting right here into these three different parts. So if you wanted to specify something different to be used on posts and something different to be used on pages on your site, then you could change that by simply making a selection in one of these drop-down boxes. But in general, on a lot of sites that I build, I'll typically just end up selecting what I want to go with here. It just kind of depends on what I'm going for as far as the look of the site. Now, to actually demonstrate how this works, I feel like this is best done using an actual page of my website. So, for example, I could go over here to this sample page, and then I can edit this page. Let me open it back up in a new window here so you can actually see these changes after I make them. Now, any options that you have right here, you're setting the default value to use on these different areas of your site, but it doesn't mean that you can't change the way a specific post or a specific page on your site behaves in terms of the sidebar layout. So you're not stuck just using this throughout your entire website. You can make this different on a per page basis if you would like. Now, I'm on this sample page on my site, and I'm going to scroll down here to this sidebar layout setting. This is in the Weaver 2 options for this page. This is actually what's known as per page options, and this allows me to essentially take settings that I have specified already in the theme and change them, but just for this one particular page. And the sidebar layout is one of these things that you can actually alter. I'll be coming back to all this in a little while to discuss some of these other options that are available. But for now at least, coming here is really the easiest way that I can demonstrate this sidebar layout and show you a couple of different options that you can use. Now, you obviously have fairly standard stuff that most of you should be familiar with. We have the normal sidebars showing up on the right-hand side of my page, which would be single column sidebar on right. Let me update this really quickly. It's actually going to shrink that sidebar a little. Now, other options that are available here. I have one that allows me to not use sidebars at all. So if I wanted a particular page on my site that was only content where I didn't have any of this stuff going down the right-hand side of the page or even the left-hand side of the page, I could simply select to use no sidebars right here and update my page, and then my sidebar will completely disappear. And this allows my content to take up more horizontal space. It can actually stretch to take up all the available space on the site instead of being limited because of the sidebar. Well, I can do the same exact thing that I did on the right. I can do that on the left as well. I can set a single column sidebar on the left and have it showing up over here instead of on the right-hand side of the page. But some of the other options that are available are actually the ones that I want to point out to you real quick, because these you may not already be familiar with, but they can actually be useful in a lot of situations. Now, I've changed this back to a right sidebar layout here, just so you can see the differences that happen when I make a change. Now I'm going to switch this over to one of these double column options. There are 4 different double column options. 2 of them are for the right and 2 of them are for the left. The differences between these, besides the right and the left specification, is here in the parentheses. Here it says top wide and here it says bottom wide. Now, this may be pretty confusing initially, so I'm just going to show this to you so you can actually see how this works. Now, I've selected double columns on the right with top wide. So when I make this update on my live site, the first change that you're going to notice, this will actually be the only change that you'll immediately see happen, but it's a pretty significant change, is this sidebar right here is going to become wider. It's going to take up more space. So if you don't have enough default space here in the sidebar, you need a little bit more space. This is one really easy way that you can actually change that. You don't get to control how much extra space is there. It's a set amount. But by refreshing this page, you can see that it expanded my sidebar a little bit further out. There's now more space here in the sidebar and less space in my actual page content. Now, the other part of this particular layout is actually this double column part right here. What this means is that my sidebar is not only on the right-hand side, but I can actually have 2 columns worth of sidebars in this one area. To actually accomplish this, though, I need to go and actually put something into those sidebars. So I'm going to go to Appearance and Widgets now. Now, when I'm on this page, I have my standard primary top sidebar right here. Below that, I have 2 more sidebar options. I have an upper right sidebar and I have a lower left sidebar. Now, to show you what this actually does, I'm going to take some items from my primary sidebar here and I'm going to move it down into these sidebars. I'm actually just going to take one item for each of them. So in my upper right sidebar, I have my little search box. And in the lower left, I have my meta links. So let me get back to this other page right here. So I have moved the meta links right here, and I have moved this search bar right here. Now what this is going to do is it's going to put these not only into a separate area, but this separate area is going to be part of this sidebar layout, but it's going to be double columns. When I refresh my page here, you can see what this actually does on my live site. I actually have 2 columns worth of sidebars right here. This is one column with the meta in it, and this is another one right out beside it with the search bar in it. But then I still have my main sidebar right here that stretches the entire width. So now when I return to this setting right here, this can actually make a little bit more sense. Double columns refers to being able to use 2 different columns of sidebars here. The word right, this refers to which side of my page. So my double column sidebar is on the right-hand side of my page. The last portion of this, top wide, this is in reference to the portion of my sidebar that's still going to take up the entire horizontal space. It's not going to be a double column sidebar. It'll still be a single column sidebar. So top wide means that the wide sidebar will be showing up on the top. So right here I have my wide sidebar. This part, it's on the top of the double columns right here. So if I wanted to change that, I could still leave it on the right, but if I select right bottom wide, then that's going to flip-flop everything. It's going to take my double column sidebars and it's going to put them on top of my wide sidebar, just like so. So I have complete control over where the wide sidebar is, where the double column sidebars are at, and exactly what is contained within each of those. But then if I wanted to, I could still switch that over to the left-hand side of the page as well. So I could do a left with top wide or bottom wide, whichever particular arrangement I wanted to happen over here. So this explains all 4 of these different double column options for the sidebar layout. The last one here is a split option. I have sidebars on the right and I have sidebars on the left. So instead of just having one or the other, this is actually going to give me both. And what determines the content that shows up in the left sidebar and the right sidebar will actually be these double column sidebars right here. So I have the meta showing up on the left, this is actually over here on my widgets page. You can see the lower/left sidebar. So this is my left sidebar when I'm using a multi-column layout. My right sidebar uses this one, the upper right sidebar. But then if you notice on my page here, it's still using my standard primary sidebar widget here on the right-hand side as well. So I have my primary sidebar, and below it is my upper right sidebar, and then on the left-hand side of the page is my left sidebar. And again, this is only when you have it set up with these split sidebars where you have one on the left and one on the right as well. Let's see. Let me return back to my settings page here. There's one last setting I want to talk about in this layout tab, and this is the default width for sidebars. Now, you remember how I had mentioned using a wider sidebar by using the double column. Even if you didn't want to use the double columns, you could just use your primary sidebar and set it to double column, and it would make it wider. But you don't get a choice as to how much wider it's going to be. If you ever needed to actually adjust the sidebars to a very specific amount, whether that's a larger width or a smaller width, that can be done through this setting right here. Now, this is not a number of pixels, this is a percentage. So this is actually going to be a percentage of your total page width from this side right over to this side. So for example, if I wanted, let me change this back over to a right column sidebar, so there's only one. And then if I go in here and let me refresh this page one more time. So you can see the standard width that it will be set up to. If I wanted to change this to perhaps 33%, this would actually make my sidebar wider for me. But it's an amount that I actually have some control over. So there's a couple different ways that you can accomplish that, and depending on exactly how wide you need your sidebar to be, you may be able to use one of the standard layout options that's available for those sidebars, or you may have to simply make some adjustments to that yourself by setting your own default width right here. Now the next page here, this is the Fonts tab. The Fonts tab gives you basic control over the fonts that are used on your site. In the Pro version, this particular area here, I can almost guarantee it's a lot more robust. They talk about giving you access to Google Fonts, which I have to admit that part of it's kind of cool and appealing sounding. I'm a little tempted to maybe check that part out myself. Google Fonts gives you access to a ton of different font selections, whereas here in Weaver, you have a fairly limited selection of fonts that you can actually use. But really, a lot of times, you may not have a need for something more than what's here. Just go through this list and try out some of these different fonts to see what they look like and, maybe which one you would prefer to use on your sites. You can control the main content font, and you can also control the title font here. I'm not sure, Stan. Anybody know what the cost of Weaver 2 Pro is? I can always go and take a look. Looks like $30 or $50 depending on which version you would need. I would imagine the professional would kind of be more like a developer's license, whereas the personal would just be if you wanted to use it on your own sites, or at least I assume as much. Now, one of the last settings here that I want to point out is the site base font size. This is the basic font size for all fonts on your entire public website, but this doesn't mean that this is the exact font size. Other font sizes in Weaver are used or represented in a percentage manner, and that percentage manner is in relation to this base font size right here. Hey Ralph, good to see you there. Yeah, that one's for professionals. You have that version of Weaver too. It looks like a number of people in here already. Okay. Yeah, it looks like a couple of you at least are already using the Pro version. I know Ralph was talking to me earlier yesterday. He said he uses it on all of his client websites that he builds. Now, just to show you how this is working here, if I change this base font size, since other fonts on my site are percentages based upon this number right here, if I make this larger, then on my public site, all of my font sizes are going to become larger. And this is going to happen essentially everywhere. You can see even my header fonts, my menu fonts, my content font, even in the sidebar or down in the comments or even in the footer here. This is changing absolutely everything here. So I typically just leave this at a default setting, but if you ever had a need to make the fonts on your site smaller or larger, instead of changing a bunch of different individual settings, you may just be able to change this one font size setting right here to get your entire site looking the way that you want it to. Now the line height. This is not a setting that you will commonly use, but what this really does is it's controlling the amount of space you have in between your lines of text. So if your text itself here is, say, 20 pixels, then the amount of spacing that is occurring in between here is really about half that, about 10 pixels plus the additional 20 pixels. This is all being done based on this default value. It's a 1.5. So this is essentially the same thing as saying that it's 1.5 spaced. So if you wanted double spaced text, then you could simply have the number 2 here. If you wanted single spaced text, then you could have the number 1. You probably won't find yourself using many other options besides 1, 1.5, or 2 here, because anything else is just going to end up looking really strange. Now you also have one more font setting here, which is optional. This is just for mobile devices. If you wanted a different number than this 12 pixels, if you wanted your text a little smaller or a little larger on mobile devices, you could change that right here. You could have it set to 11, or you could have it set to 13, for example. Now the next page here, widget areas. This is going to control both individual widgets and also entire widget areas on my site. Up at the top here, we have individual widgets. This is going to affect each individual widget on my site. Now, so you know what I'm talking about when I say individual widget. This right here, recent post, this is one widget. So this is an individual widget. However, this entire area over here, this is my primary sidebar area. So this is a widget area that encompasses all of these different individual widgets. Well, this makes a major difference when it comes to these settings, because some of these settings you're adding borders or background colors onto different parts of a widget. But if you're doing it on a widget area or an individual widget, you'll end up with completely different results. Just so you can see what I'm talking about here, if I go and I set the background color of a widget, and I could even perhaps like add a border to it. When I refresh my page after saving those changes, you can see that each individual widget here has this background color. So this is affecting each individual widget here and not actually an entire widget area. So if you wanted the entire widget area here a certain background color, so you didn't have these areas in between the widgets of color that we're showing through, if you wanted it all to be one solid color, then you would want to actually apply that to an entire widget area instead. And those different widget areas can all be found down below. I'll actually be getting to that in just another minute or so here. Now, there are a few more different options that are available up at the top for the individual widgets. I can set padding on my widgets if I need a little bit more inner space. This is often useful if I'm using background colors or borders on these individual widgets. It keeps everything from squishing right up to the edge. So you can see how the words go right up to the edge of where the background color is. Padding would give me a little bit of extra space here, and that padded area would still have this background color as part of that. Actually, just jump to a different page there. I didn't intend on jumping to. Now, you also have two color settings here. One controls the widget title, and the other one controls the widget text. This should be pretty straightforward. You know, this is the title of my widget right here, and then the text of my widget would be everything below it. But it may not necessarily affect something that is a link. A link can be affected by completely different CSS coding. There's actually really not much plain text. The only plain text I can identify in any of these widgets right here is actually this word on right here. This isn't linked up or anything. So you can see that it's kind of a gray colored text. This is the same gray color specified right here. So if I just had a standard text widget that just had text content within it, it would all get displayed in this particular color. And again, I have these CSS rules right here. So if I wanted to change that up a little bit, if I wanted to give the widget text a particular set of CSS rules to change the way that it looks, maybe I wanted bold text, or maybe I wanted to use a particular font family with it, or any one of a number of other different CSS rules. I can do all that right here in this custom CSS box. The only other major feature here to go along with the text that I can easily edit without having to provide my own CSS coding is the font size. And again, this is a percentage, like I was mentioning to you earlier, relating to the base font size that is set for my site. So this is actually 120% of that base number. So if I wanted to change that, I would simply provide a number right here, higher or lower than 120, to make adjustments to that. Now last here, I have this widget list bullet. If I'm using a perhaps text widget and I create my own custom HTML list within that widget, as long as it is an unordered list, so it uses the UL tag to open and close the list and not the OL tag, then the actual bullet point for that list is going to be controlled by this particular setting right here. You could still put custom CSS on those widgets to change this, but this is one thing that can be done through Weaver that you would not have to actually provide custom CSS for. So really a lot of the things in this theme kind of work this way. You could be accomplishing some of this stuff using CSS coding, but obviously for people not horribly familiar with CSS, it's a lot easier to simply select a setting or provide a different option than it is to figure out what that custom CSS coding would actually need to be. Now, below all of these settings, I have these different widget area settings. There's actually 6 different parts of these here, where I have footer widget, bottom widget, top widget, lower/left, upper/right, and primary widget. So each of these sections of settings applies to a particular widget area on my site. So this is my primary, this is my upper right, this is my lower left, and so on and so forth. Things that refer to the top and the bottom, you know, these will affect some of these other widgets that are in here. So if I wanted to set a particular background color, remember how I set the background color up here for the individual widget? Well, if I set this for the entire widget area instead, and then go and refresh my page, I'll end up with a background color spanning the entire widget area and not just for each individual widget item. Now, it didn't show up under these 2 items because this is actually a different widget area. Those are actually the right and the left ones. So if I set these to completely different background colors, you could easily see that I have 3 different widget areas all within this portion of the site, and I can assign a different background color and even additional settings to each of those different widget areas. I have top and bottom margins that I could apply, or I can easily apply a border to them. Any additional custom design that I wanted to do with one of these widget areas, I could do this using this CSS box right here. So just as an example, you know, the Pro version offers like these gradient backgrounds for the different widget areas. Technically, you can accomplish this by simply providing some custom CSS coding so the background is done in a gradient instead of a solid color right here. So, you know, this CSS coding can be pretty powerful at times, and this is probably the main reason why I've actually avoided upgrading to the Pro version, simply because when I find myself in a situation like this, I'm just like, oh, well, I can just accomplish that using CSS coding, for example. But the average user, you know, it might be easier for them to just get the Pro version and not bother with the additional coding for things like this. Now, these same settings for the widget areas, they're the same for each one. There are a few other little settings sprinkled in here though, like this primary right-left margins. These are margins on the left and the right-hand sides of these sidebar widget areas, and this applies to all 3 of the widget areas that can possibly show up here, which are these 3 that I have shown. So if I wanted some extra spacing on the left or even on the right, you know, like how these colors butt right all the way up against the corner. Well, what if I wanted a little bit of white space there? All I would have to do is simply provide a right margin right here. I could go 5 pixels or 10 pixels or 20 pixels, you know, whatever ends up looking best on my site. The last setting down here, all widget areas. This allows me to set padding for all of my widget areas. This is going to cover each of these different items that is listed here. Now, the reason you would want to have padding, let Let me update this one more time. If you weren't getting enough space here in between, say, the edge of your box and the actual text, then this can provide you with that additional space. Just as an example, if I put the number 20 in here and go back over to my page and update it, you can see that it provided me with even more spacing in between the edge of my widget box and where my content actually begins. How does that work with the double wide settings? Stan is asking. Are you referring to the when I would have two different columns here, it would end up applying the margins or the padding to each individual area within that double column setup. So it wouldn't just apply it to the entire thing. It's actually going to do this to each individual widget area right here. And the same thing would kind of go with these particular margins. If you're using these margin settings to apply a left and a right margin. Oh, the colored option. That would really still work the same way. They would still operate independently from one another, no matter what sidebar layout you had selected, using it on the right or the left or split or even double column. Everything would still just be affected individually based on these settings here. Now, this last setting here, define per page widget areas. This is a particular setting that most of you will probably never have a need for. However, I wanted to at least briefly point this out because I will be touching on this a little bit later in tonight's class. What you're doing here is basically providing a custom name for a new widget area that you want to create. And then you can use these widget areas on a per page basis in the Weaver 2 options. For now though, I'm just going to go ahead and skip by that. I'll return to that a little bit later on in a more appropriate place. Now, the header tab here. This is going to alter anything in the top portion of my page, basically from above this menu bar all the way up to the top of my content. So I have a number of different things I can set here, like the header background color. I have padding that I can put at the top and the bottom of the header, or I can put space after the header. All these should be fairly straightforward settings here. Really nothing different from other things that I've covered already. They just simply apply to a different portion of your page. So with your header background, you have custom CSS coding that can also go along with that. So if you wanted to try to change up the way Weaver displays that by default, you can accomplish that, with custom CSS coding. One of the main places I find myself using that custom CSS coding in terms of the actual header, though, is relational to the title and the tagline. I have a number of different settings available for me right here that affect the title and the tagline, and they're actually kind of broken down into two different parts. You kind of have this top section here that all applies to the title, and then you kind of have this bottom section right here that all applies to taglines, with a couple of additional settings in between if you just wanted to completely hide this information. Well, what I will typically do on a site, I have this header image right here, and then I also have the site title and the site tagline that is getting displayed? Well, in most situations, I won't use both. I'll try to use one or the other. If I am using both the header image and the title and the tagline, typically I'll have this information moved over top of the image. I'll be using it in combination. So I might have an image that is essentially completely blank on the right-hand side, but the left-hand side, maybe it contains a little logo graphic. So that way I have a graphic in my header, but the actual text in my header image, it's still indexable by a search engine. So it's not actually built into my image file itself. Now, with all that said, over here in Appearance and Header, you can actually easily remove a header image completely from the theme if you would like to. But this can also kind of be done back here on this other page. Before I actually remove the header, I thought I would show you a few different examples of different ways that I can kind of do this. Now to start with, I have these title and tagline settings right here. I can change the color of the tagline and the title with these boxes right here. I have boxes to set the font size in a percentage manner, of course relating to the base font size of my site. And then I can also specify a max width, which is a default of 90%. And this basically means that how much of this possible width right here can these items occupy if enough information is contained within them to stretch it all the way across the page. 90% leaves me a little bit of a margin right here on each edge. So in terms of actually getting a little bit customized with this, I have this option right here, move tagline over header image. This is what I was talking to you about before, where if I had a logo image right here and I wanted the text to be showing up next to it, I can move this information over my actual image, but this is still text that can be picked up by a search engine right here. So there's a setting available for both the tagline and another one for the title as well. So both can actually be moved over top of the header image, like so. So all you really have to do is change the positioning of these two items to get them to show up somewhere in this image, wherever it makes sense. So if you have a logo that's occupying the left-hand side, you'd want everything to be showing up more or less out here instead. Well, if you need to change the positioning, that is simply done right here with these title position options. There's one for title position and another one for the tagline position down below. And they tell you what the default values are for this. X is going to be your left and your right, and Y is going to be your up and your down. Now, since this is just a percentage, you're actually starting from the top left-hand corner. So that would be 0%, 0%. So if you wanted to go further across the page, more to the right, then you would actually need to provide an X value here as a percentage to move this across the header image here however far you want it to go. So if your logo ended right here, for example, you might say that's approximately 25% of your image. So you could come down here and change your title position to 25%. And then you could come back to your page, update the changes, and see where that actually puts your title at. So then you could make additional adjustments from there as needed. So if I wanted it to go, say, a little further to the right and perhaps a little bit further down the page, then I could maybe change this to 35%, and I could set this to like 6%. The default is 1%. Now the same thing applies here with the tagline position, except this Y value right here is not a Y value from the top of the page. It's a Y value from where it's supposed to actually be placed. So if I set the X value to 35% for the tagline and now return to my site, you can see that my title and my tagline show up directly underneath each other. If I wanted more space in between these two items right here, that's what the Y setting for the tagline is for. So setting this to 10% would bump it a little bit further into my image, so it might show up more or less down here instead. Oh no, wait, I'm actually wrong about that. Apparently setting the Y jumps it all the way back to be a default position from the top of the page, even though it's not initially set up that way. So I would actually need to go significantly further down the page, something more like 26%. And even then, that's still not quite far enough. We'll go more like 40% now. So as you can see, making changes to something like this, it's kind of a trial and error process. And it will depend on what part of your image you want this text to actually be showing up over top of. But one thing worth pointing out here, with the header images, is that moving the information over top of the header image, this is actually not going to take place on a mobile view. So if you are still using the mobile view and depending on that on your site, you have this one option right here, also move on mobile views, pro version only. This would be one particular setting that I could see being handy to have with the pro version, because you couldn't at least very easily accomplish this with CSS. You still could. You could use custom CSS rules right here and force the title and the tagline to go exactly where you want it to, even despite this one particular setting. Now, to show you one more actual practical use of these different settings here, I'm going to kind of revert my changes back to the default values right here. So I go back to my page and everything's kind of back to normal. I have my title, my tagline, and my image now. Well, I'm going to go in here and now I'm going to actually remove my header image. So if I go and visit my live page now, all I have is the title and the tagline. Well, what if I'm not planning on putting anything else up here in the top of the site? How do I handle some of this white space over here? What if I wanted to just center all of this information in the top of my title? This can easily be accomplished with the settings that are available right here in combination with a little bit of custom HTML coding. So to accomplish this, all I have to do, I'm going to go up here to my site title and I'm going to enter in some custom CSS rules. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to tell it to have a width of 100%. This doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stretch all the way from here to here. It just means that it will take up all the available space in here that it can. And that will actually end up being limited by this max width, which is 90%. So I'm taking up 100% of 90%, if that makes sense. The next thing I'm going to do is simply use the command text align center, and this is going to center my text, my title, within this particular element on my page. Now, the only other thing that I need to do involves the positions, but in this circumstance, instead of trying to do guesswork on these positions to figure out where I would need to set it to have everything centered, I'm just going to set these to 0 instead. And this code right here is going to take care of everything for me. So I'm actually going to do the exact same thing down here with my tagline. So I use the same CSS coding, and then I'm also going to set the positions to be 0. And when I do this and return to my live site, now everything is centered in my header for me. This is actually one thing that I find myself doing on a number of my sites, and this is really the easiest way to accomplish that. So now if I wanted to perhaps create some extra space, maybe it's a little too crowded right here, I could easily create some additional space right there. For example, right here, I could actually provide a Y percentage. And if I said 10% right here, then that would actually bump my title further down, so I could simply come up with a percentage number somewhere in between there that would give me the proper amount of spacing that I actually desired. Now, scrolling further down this page, I have some options here on the header image. I removed my header image already, but you can actually hide that from this particular page using this setting right here instead of removing it if you would want to. It really won't make a lot of difference one way or another which one you decide to go for. If you decide to continue using a header image, though, these different options here can actually control how and where that header image is getting displayed. First, at the top here, you have some different size settings, and this is going to control the default size of the header image. So typically, it's going to end up being the theme width by 188 pixels tall. So that would be 940 by 188. Well, if I wanted a header image of a different size, I could just specify those numbers right here. Or I could use the actual image size by using this option right here if I didn't know what the numbers were going to be. So then if I'm using the actual image size right here with this option, I can also use this image layout. Since it's not going to occupy all that header space, this would allow it to be centered or float to the left or float to the right, for example. Now these additional options, these are all relating to showing the header image. I can hide the header image on particular types of devices. Normal view would be like on desktop devices. I have large tablet, I have mobile view. So if I only wanted the image showing up on mobiles or tablets or desktops or any combination of those, I could use these different settings right here to easily accomplish that. If I wanted to hide the header image only on the front page, I have an option for that. If I wanted the header image to link back to the home page of my site, I have an option to do that. Typically, my text right here, my site title text, this will link back to the home page of my site. But if I wasn't using this text, if all I was using was a header image, then I could just have the header image link back to the home page instead. Now this last setting here, hide featured image for header. This is a feature where in my posts and pages, if I specify an image as the featured image for a particular post or page, if that image is wide enough to meet the width requirement for my theme. So essentially, if I uploaded a featured image that was 940 pixels wide, it would automatically override the header image on that particular page of my site. So it would show the featured image instead. If I didn't want that to happen, I would need to click on this checkbox right here. Now this final option here, alternate header image. Here you can specify a URL for a header image that would take place of the default header image that's showing up right here. However, you're not limited to that. You can actually go to Appearance and Header, select one of the other provided images here for the header, or you can actually upload your own image, so you don't have to specify simply a URL. Let's see, I got a couple questions here. Mike, can you put page category tabs at the very top of your page above your header graphic and with a plain white background or colored horizontal background color across the page? I think you can do what you're talking about there. Category tabs at the top of your page would kind of be for menus. I'll actually be getting into menus here. Let's see how many more tabs. That's my next tab actually. So I'll be jumping to talking about menus here in just another minute. Oh no, you're fine, Mike. Not a problem at all. Your other question is a good question too. What types of sites do I use Weaver 2 for, and why do I use it over all the other available options? I actually use Weaver 2 for every single WordPress site that I've created in at least the last 3 years. If not more than that. Kind of before that, there were still a few other ones that I sometimes used, but the reason why I use it for all my sites is just because it's so flexible. I feel like I can adapt it to pretty much any use that I want, and can make the design of it fit any desired design that I'm looking to achieve. And I suppose it also probably has to do with kind of my beginnings as an internet marketer. I mean, I'm 31 now and married with 3 kids, but when I first got started on the internet, I was just a teenager living at home with my parents, so I didn't have extra money to go out and spend on things. So when I needed to accomplish something, I went after the knowledge to help me accomplish that instead of essentially buying something to help me accomplish that. So it probably goes back to that kind of at my roots in terms of I tend to follow sort of a frugal approach to building websites and feel like if there's no need to spend money on, say, a premium theme for every new site that I build, why do it if I can accomplish it and not spend a penny, basically? Yes, Shane, you can put a logo beside the site title. I think I was kind of touching on that before, where you set your header image up and the logo could be as part of that header image, but then perhaps the rest of the header image is completely blank. So your logo maybe is only over here. And then you move the title and the tagline on top of the image. So then you would have your logo with the title and the tagline out beside it. I don't think I've ever tried that, Stan. Stan's asking if you could put a URL for a video in the header. I don't know for sure if that would work. Right here, though, where they say alternate header image, they do mention that you can provide either a URL or you could enter a full image tag specification. I wonder if you didn't put HTML coding in this box right here to display a video file. I wonder if it wouldn't put that in the header as long as the dimensions right here for the header image were correct, if that makes sense. I'd have to try that to be sure, but if that would be my initial guess as to at least one possible way to accomplish that. A picture slider may also be accomplished in the same way, James. Time setting. I mean, if you wanted something really specific as far as a picture slider, you know, if it had to be up in the header area, you might want to just try to find a free theme to go along with that. Let's see, Rand's asking what was his question. I think you were asking about the video question. He was asking if there would be any way to, instead of using a header image, to put a video in the header instead. And my best guess, although I can't guarantee that it would work, would be to put the HTML code for that video right here, because this will accept HTML coding. It could use the image tag to specify an image, so it would make sense to me that other replacements for that image could be put into this box right here, as long as the size options up here would fit whatever you're putting in. In the Pro, there are header gadgets. Okay, I see what you're saying. For like a, apparently Rand's saying in the Pro version, some of that stuff may be already available as header gadgets. Apparently, that sounds interesting. I might have to just buy the Pro version just to check it out and really see, you know, what actually can be done in that simply just cannot be accomplished in the free version. Because I know a lot of stuff can be accomplished with custom CSS coding, but then I'm sure there are other things like that that would be a lot easier. Thank you, Rand. I might take you up on that. That's a good point as well. Connie is suggesting to simply use a header widget instead of the header image, and then you could put sliders, videos, or whatever else in there. I will be briefly going over a particular header widget that this theme does. So that's a good suggestion, Connie. Thank you. That would probably be another really easy way to accomplish that. Let's see. Getting back to where I was on here. Oh, thank you, Ralph. I'll have to check that out. I appreciate that. So I've gone over all the different header image options here. I'm down now to the header widget area. This, in combination with this next section right below it, this is actually what I was just referring to with the header widget that I would be showing you guys. These settings up here control basic stuff that you can find with you know, a lot of the other areas that are part of this theme. You can set the background color, CSS coding, a font size percentage to go along with it. The main differences here, though, is that this applies to one particular widget area. You can get some specialized control over how this displays right here. But the main really important part of it is down below, header widget area widgets. You have these width percentages for each of the 4 different widgets. you have to specify these percentages to use these particular widgets. And to show you exactly how this works, I'm going to jump over to my widgets page here for just a second. So I have this header horizontal widget area right here. This widget area not only provides me a place that I can put a widget at the top of my site up in the header area, but I can actually use 4 different widgets here, and they can show up all next to each other instead of one after the other. So they'll all line up horizontally in my header. Now, to show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to put 4 widgets in here into this header horizontal widget area. So I have a couple of just standard text widgets pre-built right here, and I'm going to put these in here as well. You can see that it's just basic text, nothing special. But you could use these text widgets and provide any kind of custom HTML coding you wanted to. So you, like as Connie was suggesting, you could actually put, videos or sliders or whatever you would like to. This would be one potential place that you could do that and still get that into the header area of your site. Now, so you can see what all this looks like on my live web page. I'm going to update my page here. Now, notice right across the top here, this is my new widget area that I've set up. And my 4 widgets that I've included, my meta, search, and 2 different text boxes, again, these are showing up horizontally across the page and not going down the page. The overall height of this widget area is controlled by the largest height of the largest widget here. So this meta one takes up the most space, so everything else adjusts to that particular height. But if I wanted a very specific height, I could simply set that as the area height option right here. Now, as far as how much horizontal space these items take up, that is determined by these percentage numbers right here. So if I wanted more space for one of these and less space for another, I could just adjust the percentage numbers right there and update my live site, and the changes automatically take place. I made a little less room for this one and a little more room for the final one, just as an example. So you could put whatever information you wanted to up here. You don't have to use all 4 of these widget areas either if you didn't want to. If you just wanted to use 2 or 3 of them and specify width percentages for those couple of areas, you could do that if you only had a need for a couple of them instead. Now this covers all of the options on the header page, so I will now continue on to the menu page. Now the menu page here, this is going to cover the design and display for the main menus of my site. And on this side at least, this right here, this is the only main menu that exists here. There is one additional menu that I could put on here, which I will show you guys in just a couple of moments. Now to start with, up at the top, this first section, this menu bar section, this controls the design, the background colors, text colors, even some text design styling for the actual menu bar. So we have a menu background color of solid black, our text is solid white, and then when you hover over an item in the menu, then the background color changes to this color and the text color changes to this color. So you can see when you hover over an item how the background and text colors actually change. Well, in addition to this, we also have submenu drop-downs. The same type of settings exist for this, but what a submenu really is, it's not being shown on this page at the moment. What I would have to do to create an actual submenu would be to go into Appearance and Menus and actually create my own customized menu structure. Now you have these theme locations right here: primary navigation, mobile navigation, secondary navigation. By just selecting one of these, it controls what part of my site the menu displays on. The main menu here, this is my primary navigation right here for my theme location. But I could also use one just for mobile display, which would replace this primary navigation when it's being viewed on mobile or tablet, for example. And then I also have this secondary navigation, which actually adds a completely separate second menu bar. Now, to create a menu that had some kind of a drop-down within it, I would actually need multiple menu items. I'm just going to create kind of a dummy link to my home page here, just so you can see how this works. So now it's a real link to my home page, but there's no point in having this here. So instead of having my menu items listed one after another, I can take a menu item and kind of drag it up underneath. You see the indentation that takes place here? When it's indented, it then becomes a sub-item of my main menu item right there. So I'm going to save this and return to my live page now. Now you can see my main menu is still showing up right here, but I now have another menu up at the top of my page, and this is the menu I just created. But when I hover over an item, I'm then shown the drop-down links. Anything that is a sub-item of this item would show up under here when I hover on it. So I could create as many different menus with different sub-menu items as I wanted to using that particular system. And then the design of all those sub-menu items, that would all get controlled with these options right here. Next, I have the current page text. What this does is it controls the menu for the page that I'm currently viewing. I'm on the home page of this site, so home right here is actually bolded and kept a particular color. You see, even when I hover over it, the color doesn't change. That's because that is following these settings right here instead of the standard menu bar settings. Now next I have some mobile options. These mobile options are only for mobile slide open menus. I'll briefly touch on this in the next class when I actually get into talking about using Weaver for mobile sites. Next here I have the menu bar extras. This is basically some extra styling that I can use on my menu. And then these last two options here can actually help to hide the menu bars entirely or to remove the home item from a menu that was automatically created. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to select these different options that are available for the menu bar so you can actually see how this translates onto my live site. Now, first thing you may notice, the background color here of the menu bar, it's now a gradient instead of a solid color. And the same thing actually applies with the hover color here. The background of that is also gradient as well. And then I have added my search bar and a login or logout link to my menu bar over here on the right-hand side with some of these extra options. See right here, I have add search to menu bar and add login to menu bar. These other ones were providing me with gradients and shadows, and then I also have a menu effect. This actually applies to my drop-down menus now. So you can see when I hover over this, it actually displays in a different manner. It's supposed to be a smoother display of the whole rollout menu. You can kind of tell more of a difference if there's more menu items that are actually listed there. Now going down from there, I have menu bar layout. This simply controls which side or what type of alignment I want to have relating to these menu bars. So if I wanted my menu items here to show up on the right instead of on the left, you can see this setting that I selected here, move primary menu to right. When I update that on my site, my menu items are now on the right-hand side. And these features, these extra features that I added, these are now on the left-hand side of the menu. Now, the next part I want to talk about here, adding HTML to your menu. If you wanted to put something customized in your menu bar, it could be a link, it could be an image, it could be really anything like a Facebook like box or something where it was just the like button and not other stuff that goes along with it. You can add that kind of thing in to your site with custom HTML code, and it goes right into your menu bar when you put it in one of these boxes. You can put it on the left or on the right-hand side of the menu bar. Now, one more thing, make sure you pay attention to this little note right here. This ensures that you can control the vertical position of what you're adding to this menu bar. So whatever you're adding, you know, if you're adding an image, make sure you add this additional CSS style tag right here. For text, make sure you wrap it in the span tags. This ensures that everything gets properly aligned vertically in your menu. Otherwise, it could end up looking a little bit off. Now, we also have these info bar settings. The info bar, let me go back to my site here. This home link right here, this is actually my info bar, but that's all that's actually contained within it at the moment. If I visit another page on my site, you can see that this turns into breadcrumbs. So I have my current page and then the parent page that is above this particular page. So this is my info bar. I have settings here that allow me to control different things in this info bar. If I didn't want it showing up at all, I can just hide it altogether. If I just wanted the breadcrumbs in it to be hidden, I could hide those. There is also page navigation, which typically will not be showing up in this info bar, but it can in some circumstances. In addition to that, we also have the search box and the login, which is something that I was already using here in my menu, so you can actually force this stuff right here to show up as part of this info bar. So it's all about where you want things to show up on your live site. And then you can also control where it shows up, above the content area or after the menu bar. Now, in a lot of themes, this actually won't be much of a difference here. With the way I have this site set up after the menu bar, and the other option is essentially the same thing, but that's not always the case depending on how your site is actually laid out. Now the last two options here, breadcrumb for blog and breadcrumb for home, if I wanted to change the default home breadcrumb to say something else instead of home, that would be done with that setting right there. Why did that? Where'd my bread? Oh wait, I hid my breadcrumb. I was going to say, why did it disappear? I forgot about that checkbox. Okay, so I've set a new breadcrumb homepage link. So now instead of saying home, it says Down Comforter Guide Home. So you can change that home text link to say whatever you want. And the same thing goes for blog breadcrumbs as well, where it says a default of blog on it. You can change that to something else. You also have styling options for the info bar. You can change the background color, text color, set custom CSS rules for it, or even set different padding amounts for the top and the bottom and the left and the right. Next, I have links. The links page here, it actually has a number of different sections of links. I have standard link, post entry title link, post info link, widget link, info bar link, and footer link. Each of these sections applies to a different type of link that is used on my site. Anything that's not covered by one of these specific types will default to the standard link settings right here. So if I'm using a post, for example, within my content, there's nothing here that applies to content links, so the standard link would actually take over. But if I had a widget link, it would use these settings and not the standard link settings. So the actual settings for these links, it should be pretty straightforward type of stuff. You have colors and different designs that you can choose. You can make the text bold, italic, or underlined. The different colors that you have your link color. But then you also have these other two. If you're not familiar with CSS, you may not know what these are, visited and hover. Well, when you actually have a HTML link, whenever you hover over the link, you can actually be shown something different as opposed to when you're not hovering over it. So it makes the link kind of stand out a little bit more. Well, this is what is taking place with these two options right here, visited and hover. And also underline right here, this only applies to hovering as well. So this can show you a different text color when you hover over a link instead of the standard text color. Visited applies to links that you have essentially already clicked. If you have visited the page that link is going to take you to, then it would show you a different color for that visited link, but only if you specify a different color between the visited link and the standard link. Typically though, I like keeping link and visited the same. Sometimes I will make hover a different color, but I'll typically keep these first two identical. Now these settings are the same all the way down this page for each different link type. So it's just a matter of figuring out where the link is on your site that you want to change. If you wanted to change a widget link, then you would simply go back here and alter settings for the widget link right here to alter those particular links on your live site. Next, I have content areas. See, Kathleen is asking, can you make each individual menu a different color? To actually accomplish that, with your primary menus here, in terms of your your main and your secondary menu, I don't think they offer any straightforward way of having a different color. I assume you're referring to like this menu right here and then this menu right here, if you wanted these to be different colors. Okay. To actually accomplish that, yeah, you would have to use CSS coding to be able to pull that one off. Basically, what you would need to do is look at the source code for the page. So like select the menus and view the source code, and you can actually find these particular menus here. Like for example, here I have div class menu, ID, menu, top menu. So I could create some custom CSS coding that specifically targeted this one particular menu and then changed options relating to that menu. Yeah, Linda said this is where you hire Ryan. Oh, they have Rand is saying that in the Weaver help section they also have some CSS snippets that they offer. I don't believe I've actually taken a look at those. Thank you for pointing that out, Rand. And you're welcome as well, Kathleen. Now, I'm actually doing pretty horrible for time here. I'm already at 9:15, but I still have, I don't know, give or take a third of my presentation left to go. Weaver help. Anytime you see one of these little yellow question marks right here, just click on one of these and it brings up the Weaver help. This is actually located on your own website. So this is built into each of your themes. And the amount of information they have here, I mean, it's staggering. They really go into detail about a lot of different stuff. And it looks like they even have, I see what you mean about some of the different CSS snippets and things that they have on here. So, if you are looking for something very, very specific, you may want to check out this help section. It might be able to point you in the right direction if it's something that I haven't covered here. Yeah, it is very well organized, as Linda's saying. I've used this personally before to kind of figure out some of the more complicated parts, or maybe I just didn't know what a particular feature was in reference to. Let's say I change a feature on the theme and I don't see it do anything on my live site. Well, I can go to that help section and figure out exactly what that's doing. Okay, so let's see. I'm over here on the content area tabs now. This section, the content areas, this is essentially referring to the main content of my page. So we're going to be talking about the actual meat and potatoes of my page here, the content area. So any changes I want to make there in terms of the design would be done right here in the content areas. Now the one exception to that would be for posts that you create. Not everything for posts is contained within the content areas here. A lot of that is right here in post specifics, which I will be covering next. Now the content area. I can change different settings here to reflect whatever kind of design I'm going after. I can set text colors, background colors, whatever I need to accomplish whatever design I'm going after. The main things I want to point out in this section that's kind of different from other settings I may have already discussed with you. Number one, I have this bar under titles. This is essentially nothing different from creating a bottom border where it's just a line. And this is going to control the amount of pixels thick that line actually is. But if you wanted to get a little more creative with that, let's say you wanted to specify the color of that line, that could simply be done by putting a bottom border on as a custom CSS in one of these, like the page title text, for example. This next part, input area, I have a background and a text color here that I can specify. Input area refers to anything on my public site where a user can actually type things in. So my search bar right here, that's wherever it is that I happen to be including it on my site. But then I also have things like my comment box down below, or if somebody's logging into my site, the text boxes where they enter in their username or email and their password. All that, those are all input areas. So this controls the background color and the text color of those input areas. Now I also have some spacing options available here. I can put padding on the top or the bottom or the left or the right of my content, and I can also space out items within that content, like between the title and the content has a default amount of space which I could increase or decrease as needed. I also have space after paragraphs and list. So this would be all information included within my content. So as you can see right here, in my content, different paragraphs that are getting created, the amount of spacing that is in between these paragraphs, that's getting controlled with this setting right here. Whereas my space between title and content, that would be this amount of spacing right here. So all this is, again, adjustable through these particular Weaver settings. Next, I have image settings. I have some settings for images, and then I also have featured images. First of all, the images. These are any images that you put on your site, things that you're uploading through the page in the post editor. So if you're going right here and clicking on Add Media and uploading your own images and inserting them into the content of your page, these settings right here will control how those images are displayed. You can set border colors, you can set whether they show borders or shadows or not, and you can also set text color of the actual captions that you create for those images when you are uploading them. Next, we have the featured image. This featured image setting, if you don't already know what a featured image is, if you have uploaded an image on a page, any of those images can be set as the featured image for that particular page. And then this is typically more useful with like sites that use the blog style post instead of the page system, where you will have the excerpts of the different posts, and the featured image for that particular post could be showing up along with that excerpt on your blog pages that list all the different posts that are available. Next here I have list, HR tags, and tables. There's 3 different settings here that can control the way a particular type of HTML gets displayed on my public site. I have list bullets, kind of like I was talking about with the widgets. With my unordered list, how the bullet can automatically be assigned based on this setting right here. This applies to unordered lists that are within the content of my site now with this setting. Next, I have horizontal HR lines. An HR line is nothing but the letters HR surrounded by a less than and a greater than symbol. So it's an HR HTML tag. And what this does is it creates a vertical line across your page that should occupy all of the available width unless some kind of a margin or padding is specified in the CSS rules. Now, this is typically used to just kind of visually separate content, these HR tags. However, one thing that I wanted to point out here with newer HTML guidelines, this HR tag has actually taken on semantic meaning now. What it actually means when you use this HR tag in your content, you're telling automated software like a search engine, for example, when it's indexing your content, you're saying, hey, at this point in my content, I'm kind of shifting topics. Whatever I'm talking about, whatever my primary topic of the page is, or whatever I'm talking about in the content at that point, there's some kind of a shift in topic after I use this HR tag. Or at least that's how it is interpreted these days. While visually it's just a horizontal line, I still at least wanted to mention what that actually is, because I don't think it's something I've covered in previous training classes of mine, and thought it would be worthwhile at least briefly mentioning while I was on the subject. Next here we have table styles. Any HTML tables that you create in the content of your page can be automatically styled using one of these default table styles that Weaver has available for you. Just try each of the different options here when you have a table in your content to try to pick one that you like the best. The last part of this page here, all these comments. These comment settings control the comment section of my site. So all the way down here at the bottom where it says leave a reply for the comment, all of that is controlled by this section of settings right here, at least in terms of how it's displayed. I can set colors, background colors and text colors here, even custom CSS coding if needed. And then there are some other things that kind of go along with comments. A little message that says what the allowed HTML tags are, for example. The comment title icon, comment borders, whether comments can show up on pages with post, things of this nature. Really important here. For example, with this last one, comments on pages with post. Typically, a page on your site might be something that you would have people leave comments on, as would a post on your site. But what if you created a special page using the page with post template, which would actually give you a page that then listed a series of posts at the bottom of that page, kind of like a blog style page or a category page would. Well, if you didn't want comments on those pages with posts, instead of disabling them on each individual page, you could simply click on this checkbox right here. And, if you wanted to allow them, otherwise they're actually going to already be disabled because that simply makes more sense. You typically wouldn't have people leaving comments on those particular pages. Jumping right along here to the next section, post specifics. This actually applies just to posts. Different aspects that would only show up on a post page as opposed to a standard page of my site. So I'm going to go onto a post page here just so you can actually see what this kind of stuff is going to be affecting. First of all, we have a post background color, and then we also have a sticky post background color. Well, this is going to apply to, back on this main page here, the post color would actually occupy below this title and below the content here. But then you'd still have these info bars right here that could potentially have a different background color, which is why this post background is typically left to being transparent. Pardon me. I had to mute for just a second. Next here, I can select a number of columns for my post. When I have a blog page that is listing a number of different posts available, it's typically only done in one column. Each new post is listed below the next one. Well, I can change this with this setting and have it show 2 or 3 columns of posts instead if I would want to. You just simply need to take note of this additional setting on the settings and reading page here and make sure that the number there is actually a multiple of this number. Sorry, I got a tickle in the back of my throat. Can't seem to get it to go away. So with these post columns, if you're using multiple columns here, these next 2 settings can be used to force the first post to only occupy 1 column or to make sticky posts occupy 1 column. So these would kind of be up at the top and they'd look more important because they're occupying an entire column. Whereas the older post on that particular page will be listed down below it using this multi-column format. So it can help to change up the way all this looks. And I have heard this masonry for posts with the Pro version. I have heard this is pretty cool looking, even though I've actually not used that myself. Now next here we have this post format. I typically do not use post formats with posts that I create. There are some options here available for posts that have a post format designated. Just so I can show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to edit a post real quick. Over here on the right, you have all these different formats for different types of content that you could possibly be posting. So this will be something more commonly used on a blog style site where you might be posting videos or quotes, images, whatever the case may be. Well, if you have specified one of those post formats, then these settings will apply to only those posts that have had this post format set on them. Beyond that here, the post title area, we have comment bubble and avatars that can be shown. The post title area, let me jump back to my post page here. This would be right up here. So I have my post title, and off to the right here is my comment bubble. Well, you can also show an avatar here, basically a little thumbnail image of the author, whatever you had set up in the profile settings for yourself as the author of the pages of this site. You could show a little avatar picture there of yourself or whoever the author was. Next we have this navigation. To really get this navigation to show up, I'm actually going to need a second post. So I'm just going to go in here and create a second post real quick. It doesn't have to really even have anything in it. I just need it to be assigned to the same category that I was using before. So now when I go and I view this post, you can see right here I have a link and down at the bottom pointing to the Hello World page. But if I go back to my category page right here, you can see that these would be listed one after the other. Well, there's actually more navigation that can show up on these pages if you had multiple pages worth of posts that were getting listed. All those navigation links are controlled in this section right here. The blog navigation, this would be on the blog page like this that lists a number of different posts. So this would give me navigation to go to previous and next pages of posts within that particular section of my site. If I didn't want to show them at the top of my page or at the bottom of the page, I can hide that with these options right here. And the same thing applies to my single page navigation. I can change how that gets displayed. It uses the post titles right now. I can force that to only occur within the same categories, so posts won't be linking to other posts in different categories. It would only be within one category that this occurs. And then I could optionally choose to hide the top and or the bottom navigation links. So like on this post page where my links are showing up at the top and the bottom, right here and right here, I could remove one of those. If I only wanted them to show at the bottom of my page, I could remove the ones at the top by simply selecting Hide Top Links right here. The next section here, I have Post Meta Info Areas. There are actually two of these that go along with any given post. The first one here is immediately below the title and above the content, and the next one is below my content right here. This is general information about the post, and this is stuff that only shows up with post. This doesn't occur on standard pages in WordPress. So these info bars, I can change the background color or the text color if I want to, but the things that I'm really more interested in are all these different little checkboxes that are available. These checkboxes allow me to hide different parts of information, all these down here. If there was a certain amount or piece of this information that I didn't want to show up here, like the category or the date or the author or the permalink, for example. All those can be disabled by simply hiding them through one of these options here. But one of my favorite settings here is this one right here, use icons in post info. I actually like to use this just because it kind of clean things up a little bit. And really, I don't heavily use posts on my site, but when I do use them, I find myself using this particular option. Pay special attention to the info bar right here and the info bar right here. Notice how there's a lot of different text here. I have different text that is essentially describing the important parts, posted on, and then the date, by admin. Well, this text can be replaced by icons. So it just shows a calendar and the date, and it shows a picture of a person and the person that wrote it. And it gets rid of the text down below as well. It shows the categories and the permalinks with these little icons next to it. So I think it kind of cleans up the display, makes a little bit more sense as well. Now, some of these additional settings, I have excerpts. This section of settings allows me to do some fine-tuning with my post excerpts. Now, there's not a lot that I can really show you with this example because a lot of these settings will really do more on posts that are actually longer. These posts aren't exactly getting shortened any because they're already short. However, if you have longer posts, you can have those trimmed in the excerpts to specific links. And you can also control whether excerpts or full posts are showed in particular situations. Now, with the featured image, just like I had on the pages, this controls featured image settings for my post. And it's not just the post, but it's also the excerpts for the post. And then also some settings on individual post pages. So I can control how big these images are being displayed, whether it's a thumbnail or a larger image. So up above here, this would be like my excerpt. So it's going to show a smaller image, whereas on the actual page, it'll show a larger image, the medium size. Last section down here, this is really just relating to comments and also one little option here for hiding the author biography. These are not settings that I commonly find myself using. Typically, if my comments are closed, I'll just have that section of my site not showing at all instead of just saying comments are closed. So I'm typically not using those last settings there. This last tab here, the footer tab, controls everything at the bottom of my site down in this skinny little bar. I have two parts of information. I have my copyright statement right here in the bottom left, and then I have my powered by statements over here in the bottom right. All this gets controlled from this particular page. At the top here, I can set background and text colors, text sizes, or even border colors and border sizes for the footer area. If I didn't want the footer to show up whatsoever, I could click on this checkbox right here and it'll just completely hide it on my site. But what I'm typically going to this page to do is right down here at the bottom, where I can set my own site copyright information and or hide the powered by tag. So typically I'll click this checkbox right here to simply hide the powered by tag on my site. So this is down here in the bottom. You can see that powered by statement. Proudly powered by WordPress Weaver 2 by WordPress Weaver. These are outgoing links. This is an outgoing link to WordPress. This is an outgoing link to the Weaver theme website. These links occur on every single page throughout your entire website. So that means you've got two outgoing links on every page of your site by default. Well, I don't want that to be happening. That's going to lessen the search engine effectiveness of any given page that I create on my entire site. So I want to hide those powered by tags. And if I wanted to alter this copyright statement right here, I could change that by simply setting text right here. Or if I didn't want to show anything at all, I could simply use and NBSP semicolon. And this is actually HTML coding for simply a space. So if I updated this, it would wipe out my copyright statement and show nothing instead. So my entire footer is blank, but it's still being displayed. Now typically, I'll leave this alone. I'll usually just leave the copyright statement as it is and simply hide the powered by tag. So I just end up with something more like this across the bottom of my website. Now, I've completed all these different settings tabs that are here. There's obviously a lot more to this theme in some of these other tabs. I'll be covering a lot of these different areas in the next class for this particular series. But there actually is a little bit more that I want to talk to you about before I wrap things up for the evening. And this is on a completely different section. I'm actually going to go to the page editor now, and I'm editing a particular page on my site. What I want to pay attention to is this Weaver 2 options for this page. This is what's called per page options. You remember I was messing with the sidebar layout right here a little earlier. I wanted to revisit this section to briefly mention to you about what some of these other options can do. Up at the top, these top 7 options. These are all options that are available within the theme itself. However, this allows you to change the display, how that actually takes place on your live website on a per page basis. So instead of hiding the footer on every page of your site, let's say you just didn't want a footer on this page. You could just click on this checkbox and it will do that on this page, but not on the other pages of your site. Next here, these additional settings are really used for menus. Now typically on a brand new site, this menu, this primary menu, gets automatically populated with new pages that I create on my site. Not posts, but just the new pages that I create. Well, I can create my own custom menu to use for this particular menu. Or what I could also do is simply select which pages I didn't want to show up on that menu. So if this was a page that I did not want to show up on the primary menu, I could just click this checkbox right here, Hide Page on Default Primary Menu. It could be done the same way for just mobile devices, and this can also be different whether somebody is logged into your website or not. So I find this to be most useful on membership type of websites where you have certain pages that you typically only bring people onto if they are logged into your website. Otherwise, they shouldn't be able to access that page. Well, you can just simply hide those pages that you don't want people going to from the menu by using these particular options right here. Now, the main other settings that I would like to point out here are down below selective display of widget areas. If you had specific widget areas set up on your site and you simply don't want them to be displayed on this one particular page, you can just click on these checkboxes right here. So for example, my header horizontal area that is right up across the top of this page. If I didn't want it showing up on just this one page, but I still wanted it on the rest of the pages of my site, clicking this checkbox would accomplish that for me. This next section, all these different text boxes here, these are referring to custom per page widget areas that you've created. If you remember me mentioning really early on this widget areas page, all the way down at the bottom, define per page widget areas, this is actually what links in to these text boxes right here. Basically, I would provide unique names that I create right here to become new per page widget areas. Then I would go to the widget portion of my theme, appearance and widgets, and set the content for these new per page widget areas. And then once those widgets were set up and placed in a particular widget area of my site, what I can actually do is return here and specify replacements. So typically, like where I would have my header horizontal area, then I could instead have that widget area replaced by a new widget area that I created through this system. It gets a little bit complicated to try to do this type of stuff, but this is one of the ways that you can actually pull off changing your widgets and having them different from one page to the next. I'll have another way that I will be showing you guys how to do this using custom fields, but this will actually be in the next class. Now, scrolling up top to this page here, one of the last things I want to talk about here are the templates that are available. Now, we have some different template designs that we can use, but typically I usually end up using just the default template for pretty much anything that I build. But there are some exceptions to this. If you had a particular goal that you were trying to accomplish with a page on your site, let's say you wanted the content of your site to have, of this one page, to have two different columns worth of content. So you had a column of content going down the left and another column going down the right. You could use the two-column content and split with that more tag. You actually put that tag within your content wherever you want the content to get split into those two columns. Some of these other templates available here, sitemap, for example, can automatically create a sitemap for you. You leave the rest of your page normal, so you still have content on this page. But what's actually different about it, by only setting this template right here to sitemap, if I view this page on my site, now I have a sitemap that's actually shown down at the bottom, and this lists all of the different pages and posts and categories and even tags that are a part of this site. So it is an easy way to create kind of an automatic sitemap page to use for your site. There are some other options here. Page with post is one of my favorites to use. If you set page with post, you need to update your page first and then scroll back down to these Weaver 2 options. If you remember right here, these text boxes were one of the last parts of this page. Well, now that I've changed it to a page with post, I have this whole new section of settings available to me that just has to do with page versus post. So all I would really have to do here, this allows me to specify what post I want to show up on this page. So I could specify, I'm pretty sure I still have it as uncategorized. I could put the uncategorized category right here, and then when I view this page on my live site, then I have the uncategorized post showing up at the bottom of this page as though it was a blog style type of page, just like my home page right here, or just like one of my archive pages or my category pages. So that's kind of a way that you could create your own customized category pages by providing your own content and then using the page with post template to go along with that. Now, just like there are options available here for the pages, there are also options available with post, and they're actually different. But the post options, there really are not anywhere near as many of them. There's just a small section of post right here. They may have different options available here depending on what post format you've selected. So if you select one of these and update your page, you may want to check back in this post format section. It's possible they could add some additional settings down there for specific types of post formats. But other than that, the settings that are available for you up at the top here, these are pretty similar to the ones you'll find on the per page options as well, where you can basically just hide specific portions of this particular page from being displayed, and you're not altering the settings site-wide. It's just taking place on this one specific page here. I believe that pretty much concludes everything that I would like to show you guys for this evening. The next class is going to have more advanced topics in it. I'm actually going to be getting into talking about setting up some widgets that only work on particular pages of my site. That'll be using some of these custom fields down here. And I'm also going to get into some of the more complicated aspects of the theme as well, like using this Weaver 2 Extras plugin and using shortcodes along with that. And also get into some of these other advanced options like mobile usage and adding custom HTML and CSS coding to different parts of your site. So at least after tonight, I hope all of you have walked away with a basic understanding of the way Weaver 2 works and how you can use it to create custom designed websites when you're building whatever new WordPress site it is that you're working on. Now again,